up, Pacers Nation? You are listening to the Pacers Post-Up, brought to you by the brothers of basketball, Brad and Ryan, a part of the Believe Sports Network, presented by FanDuel. Pacers fans, let's get into it. All right, Pacers fans, we are back for yet another episode of the Pacers Post-Up. Ryan and I are reinstalling, if you will, a series that we did throughout this last season called the Sunday State of the Pacers. Ryan, it just felt like the right moment to do it. There is a lot going on in Pacers Nation. My cat, Truffle, or Bruno, whoever the hell it is looking like he wants to get on the live stream as well. So plenty of things to talk about around Pacers Nation. And that's really the whole point here of this format of episode, is really to go around the horn. We've got things gearing up. Summer League, obviously we've seen the guys in the building over the last couple of weeks, the roster, whether that's Jalen Slauson, you've got Braden Smith. We've seen a little bit of action in the FIBA World Cup qualifiers. We had Canada versus, I think it was Puerto Rico, Ethan Thompson, Andrew Nembhard, Zubac, and Croatia putting it to Cyprus a couple of days ago. Jay Huff with the Huff Stuff game-sealing block against the Dominican Republic. So plenty to talk about there. Obviously, still some dominoes to fall in free agency. I think there may be some things that we want to talk through around what is the Pacers' next potential move, if there is a move to come here before the offseason is over. And then anything else, Ryan, that you really want to get to, because we still, last time we recorded, it was right as the Jaylen Brown domino was falling. I think we do have to react slightly to that as the powers continue to shift across the Eastern Conference. And then LeBron, just, he may push this thing all the way to February. Who knows? I'm so over him. I wish he'd just go play, with Beasley and Lance in the big three. The league would be better for it. But here nor there. Where do you want to start as we kind of go around the horn here for the state of the Pacers?
Let's talk about the state of the East, because there have been moves, particularly at the top of the East, where we know we're going to see and who we're going to compete against come our Eastern Conference Finals run of next year. And the Jaylen Brown trade did take place right as we were recording last time. So in case you're living under a rock, the Celtics traded Jaylen Brown to the Sixers for Paul George, 2 first-round picks, and 2 second-round picks. Yeah. The 2 first-round picks, one of them seems really weird. It's like the best of 3 scenarios. Not really worth diving into all of that. Only thing that has to be said is a wild package for Jaylen Brown. In terms of the Sixers get an underpay. They get a former Finals MVP. He's 29 years old, was 6th in MVP voting last season, carried a team to a top 3 seed in the East. And the Celtics get undeniably worse. They've got more draft assets, but Paul George had a good first round of the playoffs last year, largely a lot of that because health is a major concern to him, and he missed, the last quarter of the season with a suspension, so kind of came in healthy. That contract, it was reported that the Sixers were already trying to get off of Paul George's deal and would have been willing to potentially give up a first-round pick and instead give up 2 picks and land Jaylen Brown. And so the Sixers have jumped in terms of their timeline and what I thought they would be in the East. We probably had them as, a tier 2, maybe tier 3 team, and they're probably up with tier 1 right now. They've got a lot of talent. VJ's going to have another year. We'll see. I don't think he'll have a sophomore slump. That is something to watch. But with Maxey, VJ, and then now Brown kind of leading that front court and early backcourt, and then you still have Embiid. We'll see his health and situation, but they have made a move that is going to shake up the East. And I think for Pacer fans, yes, you look at the Sixers now, and it's a harder path with them, but it's much easier now with the Celtics. And they have made other moves. Paul George is still a player you have to honor his talent. And Mitchell Robinson was a good add, but both those players come with huge question marks health-wise. It's just going to be a very different Celtics team. And from a Pacers perspective going into this season, yes, I know the Knicks had won the championship, but we know we have their number. The Cavs we've beaten. The Sixers now take a jump, but I ultimately thought the Celtics were the toughest matchup for us. Maybe not the favorite in the East, but the toughest matchup for us. and I no longer think that.
Yeah, I don't know how you could. I mean, who knows what Paul George's availability will look like? Yep. You talked about that already, and that's been a huge question mark. He's 36 years old. We obviously know, playoff P and all that. Paul George is not striking fear into the hearts of the opponents. No. Not the way that he did, 2013-14 Paul George when we were making those Eastern Conference Finals runs. And, we may have to do whenever Paul George decides to hang it up, there'll be a time and place for a conversation around where his career has gone post-Indy, because I think if he were looking back and reflecting, it has not been what he wanted it or thought it would be. Miles Turner, the grass is not always greener, although I will give Miles a momentary shout out. It looks like he got engaged over in Lake Como, recreating the scene from
Attack of the Clones, a very cringe movie for a cringe individual sometimes.
I'm not sure. My wife and I, Nikki and I, were there honeymooning, about this time last year. It's a beautiful place. So shout out to Miles. The grass is greener for a day for him, but it won't be this year in Milwaukee. I can guarantee you that. And it'll be interesting to see how things work out with PG in Boston. I agree with your general assessment that if you're looking at the top of the East, the team that you probably feared the most, even beyond New York, because of the fact that we've had their number, they lose Mitchell Robinson. Now, they signed Andre Drummond. I don't know how much that's moving the needle, but it is a signing that makes sense for them. I think he fits that kind of. He's not as good as Robinson. Let's make no mistake about that. He is well on the back nine, but they shore up the backup center spot with a proven veteran. But Milwaukee is not as strong. Now, you shift your focus to Philly, and Philly's going to be one of these teams that is almost a must-watch now. To try and understand, you've got Maxey, who I actually think is a really good player, not a facilitator necessarily, but a guy that can go off for 50. And absolutely get to the bucket in a lot of different ways. Edgecombe showed a lot in his rookie year. I'll be curious how that defensively works with them long-term. Two undersized guards that aren't great defenders. You throw Brown into the mix, who's really going to kind of shift into the small forward role for them. And high usage player. There was reports coming out of Portland that, they had originally had interest in him, but then their analytics department saw him as a net negative player. So there's been a lot of conversation around, okay, is this money ball? Are we getting too far into the weeds with analytics? And I think there's a balance to it all. I think the challenge in Philly is going to be usage, right? And guys that need the ball to be effective, none of them great facilitators necessarily, but the challenge will be on Nick Nurse to figure it out. And Nurse is a guy that I have a lot of respect for as a coach. And we'll see if Embiid is healthy. Dean Wade, I feel like that signing is getting blown up a little bit. I mean, he signed, I think it was somewhere around 4 years, $40 million roughly. Don't quote me on it. I don't think he's a better player than Kelly Oubre. I mean, I know that he does some things defensively that you like, but Siakam absolutely torched him in the games that we played against the Cavaliers. And so they make a savvy move, a cap savvy move, Anthony Simons, to kind of bring him in on a very cheap deal. I was surprised the market wasn't bigger for him, although it's another score first guard that can't really defend, a little undersized. So it'll be interesting how they put the puzzle pieces together, but they were not a part of the conversation, right? And that's kind of why we're spending so much time is now they are vaulted up. Do I think that they should automatically be better than the Pacers in terms of championship odds and who are the contenders? No, I don't. I mean, they were a sixth seed this last year in a year where a down year for the East, where some of your top teams weren't really, Pacers obviously not a part of the conversation, and so does the lack of depth is one thing. Now, if they add LeBron, does that change this whole dynamic? He's dragging this thing on the Rich Paul whiteboard. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but Philly is much more interesting now, and frankly, Ryan, the East as a whole is much more interesting top to bottom. You can look at a legitimate 11 or 12 teams that are saying, we want to make a playoff run. Like it should be a playoff run. And obviously we know there's only going to be 8 spots. So I guess let's do this because I'm curious. I'm going to put you on the spot. We hardly ever do any prep for these, which is the way we like to do it, frankly.
Give me your top 5 in the East right now. Just off the cuff, going into next year, and I'm not talking who's going to get the top seed or win the regular season. I'm talking top 5 contenders to win the East going into next year.
We're just going to do the homer pick, and we'll put Pacers 1. Odds can say whatever they want. I don't fear anybody. It's going to be an awesome run. There's a lot of competitive teams at the top, but I'm going to stick with that. I will give the champs an honorable 2. I think that they have earned that, and even with Mitchell Robinson adding in Andre Drummond, I think that they stand there, that I would take them over the rest of the East. I think then we start getting into a really interesting conversation, because we're talking about teams like Detroit, where they fall. Not been a good offseason. They missed out on some pieces. The Celtics, do I think they potentially just got worse, but they're still a team that has a lot of talent. Love the coaching, love the front office of that organization. And now you have Philly. And so that probably is going to round out my top 5. I am going to go Celtics still at 3. I still think Tatum, 2 years removed, going into the playoffs next year off his Achilles, is still, when playing healthy, maybe the best player in the East now. We'll see where Giannis kind of lands with his health, but it's kind of been a back and forth. I'm then going to go Philly 4. I think the additions, they were a 6 seed, but they were a strong 6 seed. I think Maxey is legit. VJ, yes, little size, can defend, though. I think they'll have to work things out, but it is a star-driven league, and they're going to have 2 of the top 10 players in the playoffs potentially, especially the way Maxey played, and we know Jaylen can rise his game. And so I'll finish there, and I guess I didn't even omit the Cavs, who we'll see with this LeBron thing. Cavs obviously beat Detroit last year. I still think they're just trending downwards. They lose a lot of depth with the Wade pick that you just signed. Keon Ellis is out. They're talking about trying to move salary to get LeBron. Even if they get LeBron, I think is a clunky at best fit when you're talking about James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, and LeBron all trying to defend at any point during the game. No. I don't care if you have Evan Mobley, who is an all-class defender. I just don't like that roster at all, so I'm going to go Detroit at 5.
And Ryan, we didn't even talk about Toronto or Miami, who have been at the top of everybody's headlines coming out of this, offseason conversation with Kawhi and Giannis. So I think I'm with you, except I would drop Detroit out. And I know a lot of people are going to say Detroit regular season, 60-win team. I think they're built for the regular season. Yeah. I'm not so sure they're built for the postseason until they. I don't love what they've done. They still have the Jalen Duren question to answer this summer. They signed Kevin Huerter to, an extension. Fine, but have they
lose Tobias?
Yeah,
just not a lot of shooting still.
There's a lot of question marks in Detroit, and I like Cade. You inevitably see all the things online. Tyrese or Cade? I mean, they're different players. Yeah. All right, and the reality is Cade is a very skilled player for his size. But when he's asked to just carry the load and you don't have a lot of playmaking around him, I know they've been rumored, Tyler Hero and all these different things, but they haven't done anything yet. And so you're talking about a team that really didn't look great in the second round this year, didn't look great in the first round this year.
No, they didn't look good at all.
And so I will be curious how strong Detroit is as a playoff threat next year. So I'm with you. I think it's us and the Knicks at the top of the conference. I still give the benefit of the doubt to Joe Mazzulla in Boston. Yeah. Paul George is a former All-Star All-NBA player. Like they'll find a way to make it work. He shoots the ball well from outside, and if he's healthy in the postseason, you still have Derek White, you still have Jason Tatum, Mitchell Robinson. They signed Keita to extension, Peyton Pritchard. They're saying he's going to be the next Brunson.
I saw that one. That's a wild take.
I'm not there, okay? but this is what's coming out of Boston. And I'll say this about Boston. There must have been something about Jaylen Brown that they know that we don't. Yeah. Whatever it is. And people are talking about his intelligence and his net negative. We mentioned that analytics. I'm not going to speculate here, but you don't give up your finals MVP, all-NBA caliber player for the package that they just got. If the rest of the league said, we kind of know.
To a rival.
Right. To somebody. I mean, and Brown went on his Twitch stream or whatever and was like, it has literally been ingrained in me for the last decade. Like, we hate these guys. And now they've got to figure out how to make it work. And listen, he's getting paid $60 million. They will. Philly's real. But I would probably throw the Cavs and Philly in there to round out my top 5. I think Detroit falls out. The Cavs do enough for me. They have enough depth, frankly, that keeps things interesting. I just am not there on Toronto yet. I don't love their roster enough. Scotty Barnes is a great player. Kawhi, obviously a great player. But, I mean, Kawhi's been on a team in the Clippers that's had veteran talent around him, and they haven't done anything the last couple of years. So I know everybody claims that the East is weaker, and now he's coming back. They won the title in 2019? Yep. I mean, this is not the same Kawhi, Kyle Lowry, Raptors that we had. Siakam, obviously. Yep. It's a different team, and I just don't think they're there yet. And Miami's Miami. We'll see what they end up being able to fill in around Giannis, but at this point in time, I think it's a little bit of a tough ask.
Ellie doesn't like Miami. Neither do I, Ellie.
Ellie's out on Miami. So for those on the live stream, if you hear my daughter, she's just under 2 weeks old, making a little noise in the back. Probably time for a feeding, if I had to guess. Those happen every couple of hours. But as we kind of move through this state of the Pacers, let's pivot, Ryan, to looking a little bit more internally within the building. And I'll give you, I guess, whatever direction you want to take this, I'll give you the chance to take the ball and run with it. Do you want to talk FIBA World Cup and what we've seen from some of the guys on the roster, or do you want to talk Summer League as we start to gear up? Some of the California Salt Lake action's already happening. Our roster is solidified for Summer League, and a couple of the names that Pacers fans certainly will recognize.
Yep, let's talk about Summer League and some of the players to watch. And the obvious one that I think most people are going to tune into is Braden Smith, who sounds like he's going to have the two-way spot. I think that's going to be a well-earned spot. He's going to have to fight. He's getting all the criticisms of, is he too short, 5'10" at the combine? He is obviously answering those questions with how he's answered any question in the past, and that is, he's done it at every level so far, so why can't he do it again? Now, it's a little bit harder when this jump is probably the biggest jump you can get. You can go from, I know there's a lot of big bodies in college, but you get into a new level of physicality. But his passing, his IQ should hold up, so he's the player to watch in there. But there are some other names that are going to come up that I kind of want to see who maybe you are tuning into a little bit more. We've still got Taylon Peter, probably had kind of an underwhelming year, but was a 54th pick overall last year. Has some flashes when that shot is going. The Slaw Dog will be back. The post-up loves him. Still think there's a potential to need a wing defender, even with Oubre. But what we saw against him playing against Cade and Giannis late last season, if he can round out any of that offensive game, we're talking about him potentially jumping from a two-way spot even to a standard deal. I think that's on the table, although nothing's guaranteed for him. We've got some other players, too, coming in. You've got Tipsy out of Iowa State, the guy out of BYU as well. So a couple guys we've signed at a rookie deal. So of those names, outside of Braden, who are you looking at most?
It has to be Slauson. For the reason that you mentioned, and that was really where I wanted to go with this, is we pick up the qualifying offer. It sounds like we're going to have a number of guys competing for the 3 two-way spots.
Yep.
Of the guys that are in that conversation, Slauson feels the most likely to be converted to a full roster spot because of what we saw at the end of last year and because of some of the intangibles, frankly, that he brings. Now, if somebody goes down, if there's a health concern and we got to bring a guard in or something like that, injury can always muck up this conversation a little bit around, all right, maybe we do have to convert somebody like Braden Smith to a full roster spot or what have you. But Slauson is, to me, the guy that has the skill set that I am most intrigued by. I think we definitely saw him progress when he got time with the big club, so to speak, last year. But make no mistake about it, this guy was dominant with the boom. And so, triple doubles scattered throughout his, season last year with the Noblesville club. I will be very curious to see how he stacks up against some of the, NBA talent, if you will, some of the younger guys, rookies that are coming in. I don't know. I think the first game we're playing, I want to say it might be against Portland.
Looking it up now.
I know it's on July 10th, and I think it tips off at 4:30 Eastern. So for those that are looking to get a little bit of summer league action, that's when this
Cleveland, Philly, Toronto, Minnesota.
Okay. So I don't know where I pulled Portland from, probably right out of the backside. But here nor there. I think what I'm ultimately trying to say is that's the guy that we had our eye on late last year, and he's the guy outside of Braden Smith I'll be watching most this year. I think also, frankly, Smith and Slaw Dog are going to be the ones that get those two spots. then it becomes that competition between Ethan Thompson and Jaylen Peter. And I think Thompson's the more versatile player. He's the guy that has a little bit more tools in the tool belt, if you will. But Jaylen Peter has one tool that, if it's sharpened well enough, can be a complete game changer. And so I think those guys competing.
Ethan isn't going to be on the roster.
Oh, he's not?
Yeah.
I thought he was.
I'm looking at it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I stand corrected. Interesting. For some reason, I thought he was. That's very interesting. I know I don't know.
I think he's playing some World Cup stuff, and maybe that's coming into play.
He is. That's exactly what he's doing. But I still think he's competing for that last two-way spot. Whether he's on the Summer League roster or not 100% sure. We'll have to go double-check that. But here nor there. I think Summer League is a time where you just sort of want to see how some of these guys look. I mentioned the Salt Lake runs and the California runs. We've gotten to see Darius A. Cup Jr. We've gotten to see Darren Peterson, who kind of went off in that first game.
Yep.
It'll be, when you see him play, you just think, okay, we kind of, again, this was a guy that midway through the college basketball season last year, he was minus 400.
Oh, I was sold.
As the odds-on favorite to go number 1 overall. And then all that stuff started happening. He wasn't playing games. Question marks abound. And then you see him play, and you're like, oh, man, this guy, the Jazz may have gotten a steal at 2. And, who the hell knows what's going on in Washington? They just trade for DeAndre Ayton to go with AD, but they've got Alex Sarr. I don't know. I almost feel bad for DeBonsa at this point, because I just feel like Washington, they've got so much money.
There was anywhere in the East to go, not hoping for anything bad for him, but a team that just mismanaged, gave out maybe the worst contract we have now in the league to Trae Young. AD's got question marks whether he even wants to be there, but they're going to hold on to him. Alex Sarr is good, not great, in my opinion, not somebody who scares me. So I think DeBonsa is going to be really good. It'll be exciting to see him when he tips off, but not the team that I think is going to be able to make a push anytime soon.
No, I don't. As we look, again, when I say 11 or 12 teams in the East, I'm sure they're one of them that thinks we've got guys now. Washington does nothing for me. And I know they've got some young guys in Bub Carrington and others that maybe are interesting, but I'll believe it when I see it from that perspective. Interesting note, Cam Jones signs a 2-way deal with the Bucks, so we will get to see him in a little bit of Summer League action. Good for him.
Yeah, wish him the best.
I think he's got a lot left to prove. A 2-way deal feels very appropriate from what we saw last year, and hopefully he's able to figure some of that out. Anything else Summer League-wise? This is one of those events that I've never been. I want to go at some point in time when you get into it. These games are often very competitive, foul crazy, but a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, no, the Summer League is great. It's always a little bit more fun, the Summer League, when you have one of those top names in there, but Braden Smith has a potential to be a big piece. Big piece is maybe a little bit stretch, but I think everybody's coining him in when you talk to Pacer fans as potentially the TJ McConnell replacement, as TJ McConnell does eventually age out. And so I think we've got a long runway with TJ, but if Braden can show a little bit, show he can hang with the size, that'll be really encouraging.
I also want to see Yuki Kawamura.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, there was a little reel that the Pacers media team put out that had like 1 million views.
Yeah.
I think the following for him, I believe he is a Korean player.
Yes.
I think the following for him in Korea is pretty strong. And so a guy that spent some time with the Grizzlies, played with Jay Huff previously, and if he wasn't 5'7", you'd be talking about him like probably in the Braden Smith conversation, because the guy obviously is super talented, but one of the most undersized guys on the court at all times. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a fun. We had a little bit of this a couple of years ago, and I'm going to forget the guy's name. It was the guy out of Nebraska, and I wish I could pull his name out. I don't want to try and butcher it here on this show, but we've had some of this, and that's when you get the platform for some of these guys that are talented, maybe not your prototypical NBA fits, but they come out, they make some plays. It's going to be fun to watch. And obviously, we'll see if anybody does sort of separate themselves, whether it's a Slauson or a Braden Smith, Jaylen Peter, et cetera. I do want to talk a little bit about the FIBA World Cup qualifier stuff, because we've got a number of guys. We mentioned Andrew Nembhard for Team Canada. We saw Ethan Thompson on the Puerto Rican team. Jay Huff is playing for Team USA. Zubac's playing for Croatia. I don't know if we have anybody beyond that.
Yeah.
Big Zoo. I want to get to Nembhard, but I'm a little bit. We've seen this from Nembhard. I don't want to say this is what I expect, but it is almost what I expect. Zubac was absolutely dominant in 18 minutes of play, and I understand they're playing against Cyprus. It's not that crazy. But for those that are asking, because I've seen this on Twitter a ton, there is if you search courtside 1891, that is the platform which you can go watch these games. There is a paywall. It's like $10 a month or $30 for the year, and the app is DAZN. I don't know how they pronounce it, Dazen or Daz. I don't know what it is. But if you want to go watch some of these games, we're going to see all these guys again on Monday. But Zoo goes for 24 and 11. He's a plus 44. Did you see some of the highlights?
No, ironically, and I'm glad you just gave the plug for how to watch it, because I tried to just look up the highlights afterward. I was just on YouTube, tried to search recents, tried to look up Croatia. I couldn't find the highlights. So were you? And if you did, how did he look?
Yeah, I mean, I went back and watched because I'm home. I'm on paternity leave. We have a lot of just, change, sleep, all of that. So I had a little downtime. Domination. Yeah. Like and again, playing in some of this FIBA action, it is a little bit more open, a little more pace and space. But lob threat. Some of the back cutting, like I don't know anybody else on the Croatia team. Mario Hezonja, the guy the Magic drafted years ago. There's a couple other guys that maybe you would recognize, but at the end of the day, he is literally just doing everything that you would want to see. When he gets a smaller guy in the post, punishing him around the rim. I think he was 9 of 11, or no, he was 10 of 13 on the night. Right. I think Nembhard went 9 of 11 in that Canada game, but it's. The competition is not stiff, Ryan, but he's doing everything that you would expect him to do, and frankly, looking like he's in good shape.
That's what I was about. That was going to be what I asked.
Yeah, that is where I think if you're going to take anything away from this, he's ready to roll. That to me is the number one most important thing, and he said it in his exit interview coming out of the end of this year. I have all summer to get in the best shape of my life, and that's. You can tell he's putting that mantra kind of into work here. Didn't see any outside shots. Just for those that maybe are interested.
When you're playing in the World Cup ball, I don't think he needs that at all.
No, I don't think Croatia's stretching him out to the 3-point line. But no, looked solid, dominated the game from the inside. A couple of nice passes. I think that's where you're going to see. Let's take this conversation here, because I've seen a lot of people on Twitter going this route. I want to get your thoughts. I don't know if you watched the game the other day, but it was the Thunder against the Grizzlies. So we got to see Boozer, and we got to see, Bennett Sturz, and then whatever the guy's name is, Adai Mara from Michigan, the 7'3" center. A lot of people talking about, well, what if we had just kept the 5th pick? Maybe we could have traded that back and just taken Mara, right? Yeah. And I think people are underselling just how bona fide and talented Zubac is. Yeah. Like, Mara's a very interesting prospect, and I thought he looked really good in that Summer League game. Obviously, when you're 7'3", that jumps off the screen with length, and he had some nice entry passes and things like that, but he's still very raw. Is there any validity to the argument of we should have just taken that guy and not traded away? What are you going to do with Mathurin? Are we going to sign him to $20 million? Benedict Mathurin, by the way, from a free agent perspective, still doesn't have any sort of solidified future. So I'm asking you a lot of questions, but what do you think on that front?
No, it's still ridiculous to think you're going to bring in any type of rookie center who's not named Wembanyama type level and have them be ready to be your starting center going into championship games. It's just... It's not there, and it is downplaying Zubac, who is, basically on the fringe of all-star level, all-NBA. Like, we know what he brings and what he's going to bring to the table, and I still think Pacer fans underestimate the jump he's going to have with the best guard in the league to make a big look good. Look at the jump Miles Turner had with Tyrese and then without Tyrese again, and I know that Yes, Zubac has played with some talented guys like James Harden, but Harden is not what Tyrese is. Harden is so much more isolation. Maybe I'll get it, so yeah, I'll feed you moments, but this is going to be a much more free-flowing offense. I would not want to put my eggs in that kind of a basket, knowing we have a window. And Pacer fans, we have to remember that, yes, we have a young core with some of these guys, Nembhard, Nesmith, Tyrese, long runway. We got to find players to work with them long-term. But Pascal is ready. Like this week, we saw what he did last year, and I think he's going to age really well, and he's going to be on this team for a lot of years to come. But at this level, we need to maximize what he is doing. And putting a guy like Zubac is going to win. So I think it's the right move. I still think Kevin Pritchard put us in the best of both worlds. We just didn't get the coin flip, but we still got the center. And so I'll always think that way. And on the Mathurin front, least shocking thing ever. This is you want to talk analytics, and they hate Jaylen Brown. I assure you they hate Benedict Mathurin more.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Ben. And I agree with you 100%. If you are looking to win a championship, it is very, very unlikely you are going to do that with a core piece that is a rookie. You just don't see, even these guys that are number one overall picks, they take time. And Zubac was all defensive second team, fringe all NBA player, not an all-star player, but doesn't have to be, and that's not what his role is going to be on this team.
Would you want Alex Sarr? I mean, is he ready? And he was the number 2 overall pick.
That's a great point. And that's and the answer is no.
Zubac is better than Alex Sarr right now, no questions asked.
No doubt about it. And I think we're going to see this come to life, as you said, next year. And that's the part where we left off the last episode saying, I cannot wait to just get to basketball, because so many of these questions are going to start getting answered when we get on the floor. You see the spacing, you see the physicality, you see the extra element that he brings to this team, and you're like, oh, I understand why we paid the price tag that we did. And now that price tag has been totally validated as the right price, particularly with the Walker Kessler deal and things that we've seen around the league. I want to ask one more tangent, and then we'll kind of round this thing out so we got to get to Nembhard, because he was so good for Canada the other night. But I know there's been a lot of talk around, secondary moves. It's been Kelly Oubre, okay? And in the conversation of center, Ryan, we are talking a lot about, okay, is it Huff? Is it Potter? Do we need to shore up center? To your point, yes, we have some young pieces on this roster. Should we be looking to get another, I saw some names that were, on Twitter. We've had some people tweet at us like Muhammad Gay, Ryan Kalkbrenner, like some of these guys that maybe just because of how trades and roster moves have shifted throughout the offseason, like, do we try and target some of these younger centers as a second option to Zoo, and maybe the future option if Zoo is only going to be here for this 2-year window that he's under contract? I hope he's not. I hope it's a longer runway for Zoo. We've talked a lot about guys like Yves Missi, but it sounds like New Orleans, even though they're not doing anything, don't have any interest in really moving off of him. They see him as integral to their future. Do we need to do anything at center? That's kind of the punchline question I want to get to.
My answer is not yet.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is I think we saw enough from Huff and Potter that both of them could be decent backup bigs in this league. I think we're kind of floating. Are they third stringers or second stringers right now? I think we know that ultimately when the playoffs come, we're going to shrink that rotation anyway, and you'll probably see Obi and Pascal play a little bit of time at that spot. And so I think what the Pacers are doing right now is their big move was getting Zubac. Their contingency plan was getting another wing in Kelly Oubre Jr., and now I think we let the roster flesh it out, because there's going to come a time, again, next trade deadline, where we're going to have to make some questions around what's Furphy's fit? How does he look if he can get back healthy before the deadline? Walker, the big one. Shepherd. These guys, they're going to have deals coming up. Fit. We're going to have to see what that all looks like. And I think that is when you analyze the team. And if Huff and Potter aren't cutting it, then you go and say, all right, Jarris Walker, what can we get, for him? Does he get a Missy? Do we get interest? What do we need to attach? That kind of thinking. So I think Indy's kind of going to let this one shake out. Let the East figure out, see where LeBron lands, see where everything kind of starts, get the season going, see what the team looks like with Zubac in place, where it's meshing, where it's not. and then make that next move.
I think it's really smart, and I think it's really hard for fans to accept that.
Yeah.
Fans want the new shiny toy. They want the new name coming in. We saw Huff and Potter last year. It's old news. We know what they can and can't do. But I think your point is really well taken that we're already integrating new guys. We've got a new center that hasn't played with Tyrese, that hasn't played with Siakam. It's going to take some time to flush some of this out. And then the second part of your point is probably as important. How does the East start to shape up?
Yeah.
Because what we know about playoff basketball is so much of it is matchup driven. So if you're getting to that trade deadline next year and you're riding hot with Huff and Potter, right? And we get to that point and it's like, okay, are we, how is the conference shaping up and who do we think the major players are from a contender standpoint? And maybe we say, you know what, we do need a more mobile, athletic big that can come in and gives us the ability to switch if teams, are going to attack our bigs or what have you. Like those are the types of things that I think are fringe moves. To your point, we can make later in the season.
Yeah.
And we have Huff and Potter on such team-friendly deals that I think also what gives us a little bit more understanding mid-year is what does Shepherd and Walker look like? Because those are two guys that are up for extensions. Everybody is eager to include them in any sort of deal this summer because those are the most obvious guys. However, they could be integral parts to this roster.
No question.
Like we've seen them both matter in meaningful playoff games. And so it's like if those two guys are shaping up to be more solidified role players on the back half of this roster, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but you'll have more information throughout the season. And where is Furphy? Does that make one of those two guys expendable? So as time goes on and we get more intel around this roster, it makes the decision-making process much easier. Rather than putting all of our eggs in the basket in July, I think what you're saying is let's let this play out. And maybe a guy in Huff surprises us, right? I mentioned, we'll get back to the FIBA World Cup stuff and then bring this in for a landing. I mentioned he had the game-saving block. They were attacking him on switches. I don't know why Team USA was switching in that game down the stretch. It was obvious that they were going to go after Huff in space, which we know is not his forte, but he is an elite rim protector. The shot is there. I think, again, matchup-wise, he is somebody that you can turn to. And then now that we've brought in an Oubre, it gives us, instead of just running Siakam and Obi small ball at the 5, you can run the 3 of them, and you can have an uber switchable lineup with length across. And I know that's very small ball, and we'll get into some of this, but it's all predicated on matchups. I don't want to get too far off the rails here as we're doing a State of the Pacers episode, but plenty to talk about from that perspective. And I am more okay with less. Less because we have the continuity on this roster. You look across the rest of the East, aside from New York, that continuity conversation is null. And people can talk about, it took LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. They didn't win a championship right away. And so they
needed Ray Allen. There
is something to be said for that. You're absolutely right. Ray Allen and Mike Miller and all the guys to kind of carry him on the fringes. But I just do want to shout out Andrew Nembhard. He had an unbelievable game for Team Canada. Canada's put out some really cool stuff on their social media profiles. If you haven't seen the highlights, step back 3 over Ethan Thompson.
Nasty.
Some no-look passes. Like, Nembhard is that guy.
He's so good.
And this is where, to bring this full circle to the conversation around the East, okay? Rightfully so, people are enamored with a guy in VJ Edgecombe after a really strong rookie year. Probably outplayed his draft position. If there was a redraft from last year, he probably goes a little bit higher. But Andrew Nembhard is so damn good. And I think he gets overlooked time and time again. I know he's not the explosive athlete that Edgecombe is, but on the defensive end, the playmaking, he was 5 of 7 from deep in that game the other night against Puerto Rico. If that even lingers at all, he had his best career shooting year this past season. I just think he's going to be so dangerous for us. Anything else to add on that, or anything else to add, period, before we bring this one in for a landing round?
No, I love what you said, even bringing up Edgecombe, because Nembhard is the guy that we're going to be able to put on Tyrese Maxey, and yet still he's going to be hitting the crazy crossovers, the big shots, 3-level scorer. He plays almost the Lance Stevenson downhill where he throws his shoulder into guys. We see that all the time. I think there's no question if we took a poll around the league that he is on the list of the single most underrated players out there. There's just no question. And yeah, it's probably because he doesn't average 20 points a game and people fall in love with that stat. Like, oh, Tyler here, great. He scores 24 a game. Who gives a shit? At this point in the league, we know what Nembhard does. He is such a winner. And if we're going to go analytics side, the stats love him. There's no question about it.
Well, he didn't average 20, but he averaged 18.
Yeah.
And threw in almost 8 dimes on top of it. And, oh, by the way, you talk about the 3-level scoring. People are like, oh, we don't have anybody to give the ball to that can go get a bucket. Andrew Nembhard's a guy that can go get a bucket. Like, that was not his forte early in his career. Obviously, Matherin came into the league and he was elite at that from day one. But Nembhard has improved leaps and bounds in that category. And so I don't think it is fair to say that he's not somebody you could turn to late in a game and say, all right, we're going to put the ball in your hands. Something good will happen. And we see that on Team Canada. I think they gave him player of the game or whatever. Shea had 25, but Andrew Nembhard was phenomenal in that game. And I'm looking forward to seeing him play again on Monday. Croatia's in action on Monday. We've got Summer League right around the corner, July 10th, as I said. You said it was Cleveland in the first game, 4:30 tip on the 10th. So a lot of fun things, Ryan, that we're going to be paying attention to. Obviously, we will keep our pulse on the free agency conversations, trades, things like that going on around the league. But listen, we're here. This is the middle of summer. We kind of had the dog days there, late May, early June. The draft, that was a bit of a sore spot. But now we've got plenty to talk about. Training camp is going to be here before we know it. Anything else, Ryan, before we wrap this one up?
Nope.
Awesome. Pacers fans, be sure to check us out at Pacers Post Up on Twitter. Hope you guys are enjoying these live streams. If you are, give us a like, retweet them out. We do appreciate it. As always, appreciate you guys listening. Go Pacers.